Hello, good evening, good morning, good afternoon. My name is Wilbert Mukori. Welcome to this program. Tonight, I would like to talk about the stories that have been taking the rounds that Mnangagwa is now bidding to change the constitution so that he can serve as state president for a third term. The constitution at the present moment allows an individual to serve a maximum of 2 terms. And this is his second term. And already there's talk that he's keen to go for the third one. Last week, one of the 10 provinces in Zimbabwe, Mashonaland, party members were chanting that he will be there in 2030, meaning he will be participating in 2030 in the elections. As a candidate, president. Mnangagwa has already secured the 2/3 majority in parliament. In fact, he's got a super majority thanks to the infighting in Triple C. That has resulted in some of the MPs being recalled. And then when the by-elections were held, ZANU-PF has since won most of those recalled seats, securing now a 2/3 majority in parliament. And on the Senate, although ZANU-PF per se does not have an outright 2/3 majority, it is no secret that the 18 chiefs and the 2 senators representing the disabled people are chosen by ZANU-PF, and therefore then they will be expected to vote with ZANU-PF, which will give ZANU-PF 52 seats, just one short of the 2/3 majority in the 80-member senatorial house. And with the recalls and the divisions in Triple C, it is almost certain that you will be able to get the one extra senator from the Triple C senators to vote with ZANU-PF. So in terms of the legal requirements, I think he's certain to meet it. Yes, the law says he should have a referendum. Again, if he was able to blatantly rig last year's election, a referendum is even easier to rig. And so we can be certain that he has gone through that one. So what he's been saying, as we saw from last week, is he is preparing the party, ZANU-PF party, to accept him as serving the third term. And the slogan we heard last week is clearly meant to be the test balloon. And tonight's report is really focusing on what the ZANU-PF MPs are saying. Already they are making their positions very clear. They will support him on conditions that they are given land, loans for cars, and so forth. And they don't make it a secret, it is. They are seeing it as an opportunity for them to make their own demands and line up their own nests. This should not come as a surprise. During the GNU of 2008 to 2013, ZANU-PF cronies boasted that MDC leaders were not implementing the reforms because they have learned to enjoy the gravy train, good life. Nazwane MDC adzidza kuti kaanyerere, they boasted. And of course they were right. What they were saying there is the truth. And those MDC leaders would have learned from the ZANU-PF leaders themselves. Because that is exactly what Mugabe had done almost soon after independence, bribing ZANU-PF leaders so that they would do as he pleased. In an interview with Dr. Sibama Koni revealed that within a few months of their getting into power, Mugabe surprised his entire cabinet by giving them new Mercedes-Benz limousines. Contrary to what Ian Smith was doing with his cabinet, they were driving Peugeot 406s, and they were not allowed to take it home. It was only to be used during office hours and for government business. Mugabe granted them the ministerial cars, and they were ministers were on government service 24/7. So wherever they went, they could go with it. And this started this patronage system. Those Mercedes-Benz were not approved by the budget, in a budget. And cabinet itself never even discussed them. This was a treat from Mugabe to his ministers, my chef. And this started this culture that there is a ruling class that can have benefits. The gravy train was off and running. And this has been at the heart of Zimbabwean politics. In 1990, Margaret Dongo complained of how ZANU-PF party officials, government officials were absolutely toothless when it comes to dealing with Mugabe, to challenging Mugabe. In a sheer frustration, she called them Vakadzi va Mugabe, Mugabe's concubines. The reason for it, why they were so toothless, is because they were enjoying the life on the gravy train. They didn't want to rock the boat. Just as much as the MDC leaders during the GNU, they did not want to implement even one meaningful reform because they too didn't want to rock the boat. And now we've got a situation where Mnangagwa rigged last year's elections, and now he's preparing the ground to make sure that the the constraint stopping him running for a third term as president is cleared, and he's clearing the ground. And so far he's ready for it, and his ministers are coming forward and naming their price. And of course, there's no problem with that, He will grant them that. We can pretend all we like that Zimbabwe is a democracy. It is not. All our state institutions and public institutions have been captured by ZANU-PF. We saw before the last year's election how in June, just a few weeks before the election process started, Mnangagwa granted all the judges $400,000 housing allowance, it was called. Of course, it was a bribe. In November, just a few months earlier on, he had given all the MPs and senators $40,000 housing allowance again, which they never applied for. And it was called the housing allowance, but we all know that they were not expected to repay it. And that was the motive why CCC leaders could not even stop for a minute to consider the possibility of not participating in the 2023 elections. Even when it was clear that these elections are flawed, that possibility was ruled out. There was no way they were going to participate. They were not going to lose out on some of those benefits, housing allowance benefits, and they already get a $60,000 car allowance, and now it has been changed so that you get it every 2 years. And with this bid for Mnangagwa to become state president for a third term, they will name their price, and they want to be allocated farms and money, stands in urban centers to build houses. And the farms have got to be a minimum size of so many hundreds of acres. They'll come with a title deed, and so forth. And yet the same regime, only last week, has been evicting Zimbabweans who, at growth points in the rural areas, had, they thought legally, been allocated a piece of land, in some cases no more than just a few acres, and they'd build their houses there. And the regime has come back and said, no one is allowed to own land in the rural areas. And so those houses were demolished. It's all political. I think the issue of the third term of Mnangagwa is not really a big issue here. It just gives him one option. If he should want to pursue it, he can pursue it. If he should find maybe he doesn't want to pursue it, he can then create a situation where he literally names the next president for the country. And the possibility of him or her being from his own family cannot be ruled out. He already has his son as deputy minister and a few other relatives in senior government positions or in the army. And they are being groomed in preparation for the possibility of them succeeding him. So it gives him another option. He can either get a third term himself. If he should decide, well, maybe that's too risky, get one of his own close relatives to be president. He already has the wealth lined up to bribe the politicians from both sides of the political divide. ZANU-PF and the few of the oppositions who are still in power today. This is the scenario that we are facing in Zimbabwe. It is tragic, but that is the reality. Unless we can get a competent opposition party who can finally focus on the issue of democratic reforms to stop ZANU-PF rigging the elections, Mnangagwa will have his wishes. Food for thought. Thank you very much for listening, and good night.